today we're going to continue from where we stopped. All right. So in the last class, we created this, this folder here or directory, and we initialized it as a Git repository. And we saw that, that folder, this is a folder right here, test Git. Okay. So if I do cd into that, and then I do ls-a, right, I can see that I have my .git folder right here. So that tells me that this is a Git repository. And in the last class, we also saw that because it's a Git repository, we can actually now run some, Git commands against this particular repository, right? So if I come here now and I say Git status, I can see that the commands is executing. I'm not getting any error because it is now a Git repository. Okay. Now let's look at a few concepts like your branches, okay, or your maybe how to configure your username and your email, all right, and your SSH key, right, so that every time you don't have to run the SSH agent, okay, because if you don't configure your SSH key, that means anytime you start up your system like this and you want to continue your work, you will have to run the SSH agent, add your key to the agent, but that is not what we want to do every time, right? We want to just configure that so that anytime we resume back, at where we stopped, we can actually just continue with our commit, push, and all of that. For example, if I come here now, okay, and I do ls, if I say git status, for example, I don't have anything yet, but let's say, for example, I do echo, all right, and then I come here, let's say I say echo, let's say today, all right, so let's say today we are discussing, all right, Git branches, okay, and then I output that to, let's say, file1.txt, for example, and then I press enter, right? So if I do cat, and I cut my file1.txt, now I can see that I have my today, we are discussing Git branches, right? So if I come here now and I say Git status, okay, now I can see that the file has been modified. So I need to do what? I need to add the changes. I need to commit the changes to my local repository. Okay, now watch this. So if I come here and I say git add, all right, and I say git commit, and then I put in my message to say, all right, file 1 has been, modified. All right, so if I do that commit, and then if I say git push now watch this. Now I have committed my changes. I want to push, all right, to my remote origin. In the last class, we already configured the origin, right? So if I press enter, now let's see what we have. Now you can see that this is going through. Okay, now this is working. Now, why is this working? Why is it not giving us, any kind of error? Okay, why is it not showing us, any, error and all of those kind of things? Now, let's watch something. So if I come here and I say git log, all right, now you can see that the commit here, where's the commit now? Let's see. All right, so file 1 has been modified. Okay, so we can see the date right here, we can see the time, and then we can also see the author, right? That the author is this person, and then of course this is the email address of the person doing that. Now, on your own system, you may not have it as smooth as this, right? Because if you come here to say, if you go to nano, and then you open up your .git folder, all right, that .git folder that you have within your working directory, if you open that up, now here, you don't have a few configurations, right? There are some things that are missing here. Number one, the username and the email address here is missing because in some system, you may have that issue, right? You may want to push and then it's telling you, oh, cannot find your key or something like that. Or maybe your username and email address is not configured properly and all of those kind of things. So if you don't want to have that kind of a challenge, what you can do is to open up this file, all right, and then come right here, open up, all right, a square bracket, and then here you create a user, and then here you basically just say the name of the user, all right, so you put your name there, so you can put your name here like this, so that'll be the username of your Git repo, and then the email, you configure that like this, all right, that'll be the email address of your GitHub repo as well. So you configure that, and that's all you have to do, right? And then you say Control O to save, Control X to exit out, right? So the next time, if you do cat.git/config, all right, you can see that the user, all right, has been configured properly. Now, in case you have an issue on your own system, I encourage that you do this, because I mean, what I did now is I was able to push directly without configuring my username. Now, it may not be the case on your system. So that is why I'm showing you, all right, how to configure your username, so that each time you don't have to do git config -, global, all right, user.name and all of that. You don't have to do that, right, every time, because this happens a lot on Windows. Okay, if you're using Windows machine, now I'm using Linux, that may be the reason why I'm not encountering that error. But if you're using Windows, you may have to just open up your git config file and then configure your username and your email, just like I have done. All right, now the next one I want is around the SSH key. Now, by default, when I logged into my own Ubuntu machine, now I was able to just push without having, without seeing any error around maybe my key is not, it's not seeing my key, or my key is not running, things like that. But on a Windows machine, it may not be the same situation, right? So the first thing you need to do is to first locate where your key is. So here, I know that my own key is somewhere here, and that's the default location for everybody, all right, except you change your own, the place where you kept your keys, right? So I know that my key is right here. So this is my private key, and this is my public key, all right here. Now, how do I add this key directly to my SSH, so that on your own system, or perhaps you're trying to push someday and then it's saying, oh, your key is not running or something is happening? How do you add this automatically to your SSH without having to start the SSH agent every time? How do you do that? SSH/config. So I'm going to create a config file. Now it's not there. That was why I showed you this. So you can see that we don't have anything like a config file here. So what we're doing now is to create a config file inside of that .ssh directory. Okay. So open that up. Now, how do you configure your keys? Okay. So here you're going to have host. All right. Pay attention to what I'm doing. So the host is github.com. Right, so that is the remote host that I'm pushing to. Now, mind you, you can actually do this also for GitLab. So as many repositories, as many remote repositories that you're using, let's say you're using GitHub, you're using GitLab, you're using Bitbucket, you can actually put all of their configurations in this config file with the key, all right, that is connected to each of them. Remember, in the last video, we copied our public key and then put that on our GitHub repository, right? And then we were able to use that to authenticate with our remote repository and then push to that repository, okay? So here you have your github.com, and then you tab a bit, all right? So you can do a little bit of tab here. So the host is github.com, and the host name, all right? So don't forget the host name. So you configure the host name like this. So the host name also is github.com, right? That's the URL of what we're pushing to. And then here you have the user, right? So the user is actually Git, okay? So here, this should be going a bit, all right? So that's under this. So the user is Git. Is the Git user that is performing the operation. So the user is Git. And then here you have what you call, all right, identity, all right, identity file. So the identity file is the location of your key, okay? So you put that and then .ssh, all right, /id, and then whatever, okay? So let me save this first. Oops, I hope I saved that. All right, so let me just grab this. So this is my key here. So I'm just going to copy this, all right, and then I'll open that folder again. Okay, so I'll come here. My identity file is right here, and then I'll come here and then I'll drop that. All right, so that's all that you have to do. So if you have another repo like GitLab, all you need to do is just to duplicate this, all right, and then put it, and then put the key file and all of that. So anytime you would want to access your repo, you want to push to the remote repository, it is going to look into this, all right, it's going to look into this config file, all right, and then search if there's any configuration that's going to use that by default. So with this configuration, now you don't have to run the SSH agent, all right, every time. Okay, so that's the purpose of what we just did. So save this, exit out, all right, and then you can clear, all right, your screen. And that's all you have to do. Is that okay? So now that is for those who may be having issues with their keys and all of that. So that's actually a way to solve that problem. Now, let's get into, all right, the concept of branches, right? Now, if I do git branch, all right, now I can see here that I am on the master branch. Now, there's master branch, there's main branch. They actually mean the same thing, okay? So don't get it confused. Now, and again, your branch does not have to be named master. In fact, you can decide to give it any name you want. It doesn't have to be main. It doesn't have to be master. You can name your branch whatever name, all right, that you want to name it. And as a matter of fact, when you're doing your git init, so for example, when you're doing the git init for the first time, you can actually specify the branch name that you want to use instead of going with, all right, the default master or the default main branch. Okay, so you can specify the name that you want to use. So the way to do that is, okay, so let me just go out a bit. All right, so let's create a new directory. So if I say mkdir, all right, let's just say test git 2, for example, right? I can cd into that and enter that. Now, the git init, and then I will use, all right, this command called initial, all right, branch equals. So with these, I can specify the name of the initial branch that I want to use. So it doesn't have to be master, it doesn't have to be main, right? The idea behind the master and the main is just basically that, okay, there's a branch that is perhaps maybe your production branch, right? It's more like the protected branch, which basically means anybody cannot just put into the branch, all right, any time or the way they want, right? Somebody has to check what they are trying to merge into that branch before the changes are accepted. So the master or the main branch is actually seen as your main branch, right? Which contains your stable code, right? Your stable application version. So that is where, you have that in the master branch or the main branch. But like I said, it doesn't have to be master. It doesn't have to be main. It can actually be called anything, right? Depending on your organizational, structure and whatever naming convention that you use in your company. Okay. So with this one now, I can say git init initial branch, and then I can call this branch. I can just give it my name, for example, right? Or I can just say, okay, I want the initial branch to be called DevOps, and then I press enter. Now it says what? Initialized empty Git repository, all right, in this particular location. So now I have created a branch called DevOps, right? And it doesn't have to be, all right, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be master, it doesn't have to be main, right? So that branch is what is DevOps. And this branch right here, this DevOps branch right here will be my main branch. Okay, it will be my main branch. All right, so like your default branch. Is that okay? So that's how to go, all right, about it. Okay. Now let's go back to the branch that we were using initially. So I'm going to go, all right, and then, all right, to that branch. Okay. So here I have these files, and if I do git branch once again, all right, I'm on the master branch, right? So how do you create a new branch? Now, when you're creating a new branch, you are actually creating a new branch from an already existing branch, which means you can't just create a new branch, all right, independent of, all right, any existing branch, right? Which means whatever branch that you're creating, it means that there's already a branch, because I mean you can't have a Git repository without a default branch. At least there must be one branch. So when you're creating a new branch, you're actually creating it from an existing branch. So which means every file and every folder, whatever it is that you have in the default branch, will be copied into the new branch. Is that okay? Now, the purpose of branching is basically for modification purposes. For example, you're developing a new, all right, application. Now, your default branch is more like your protected branch, is more like that branch that contains the stable version of your application that you are running in your production server, right? So that is like your default branch or your main branch or your master branch, depending on the name you give to it. Now, you can actually create a copy of that branch, and then for some reason you want to work on it, maybe you're developing a new feature. Because when you're developing a new feature, when you're trying to update something, right, in a work environment, you have three different environments, right? So for example, there's the dev environment, there's the staging, all right, environment, and there's the prod environment, right? So the prod environment is usually connected to your master, all right, slash, all right, main branch, Okay, the dev environment is usually connected to maybe another branch, right? This can be the feature branch, for example. The staging can be connected to maybe the test branch, for example. So each of your environment will have a branch that they are connected to, right? So the production branch is usually connected to your master or your main branch. So that master or main branch is a protected branch that not just anybody can tamper with or can, modify as they want, right? Now, when you're trying to develop a new application, a new version, maybe a new feature, okay? Now, you already have your stable code in the main branch. So what do? You create a copy of that branch, all right, and then you can now start working on that. Now, when you create a copy of a branch, whatever it is that you're doing in that copy does not affect the main branch. All right, it doesn't affect the main branch. So in an organization, every developer will have their own branch that they are working, all right, on. Okay, that does not have anything to do with the main or the master branch, right? So what do? You basically, all right, now you can create a branch on the console. Actually, you can create a branch on the console from here. All right. So if you click on here, this is the repo that we have. So from here now, I can see that I have just one branch, right? And then I can click here to say to view all branches. So if I click on view all branches, I can actually come here and say create a new branch. Now you can see that here is telling me what source. So if I click on new branch, it's telling me what source, which means you cannot create a branch that is just on its own. It has to be connected to an already existing branch. So whatever is in the master branch is what you are copying into the new branch. Okay, so here you can give your branch a name and then you can create a new branch. So it's basically just going to create a copy of this branch. Or if there's any other branch, you can put the name of the branch there and then create a new branch from that, all right, already existing branch. But you cannot have a branch that is just on its own. No, it has to be, all right, it has to be created from an already existing branch. Okay, so you can create a branch here and then, still use it. But of course, let's see how we can actually create a branch, all right, using the CLI. Okay, so here the command is git branch, all right. I think no, that's the git checkout rather. All right, git checkout -b. So git checkout -b there basically means you want to create a new branch. So let's call this new branch. All right, let's just call it feature. Okay, and then I press enter. Now it created a new branch and automatically is switched to a new branch. So here I have switched to a new branch feature. So now if I say git branch, all right, now you can see here that is highlighting this. All right, so that means this is the branch that I'm in currently, and that is the feature branch. Now, if I do ls, all of the files from master have actually been copied here. Okay, so now whatever I do now, I am actually working on the feature branch, not the master branch. Is that okay? Any file I modify here, anything I do here, it is actually, all right, the feature branch that I'm working on, not the master branch. Now, if I come here now and I say, file, let's say, remove file, for example, .txt, right? So I've removed it. Now, this is the feature branch, okay? Whatever I'm doing now doesn't affect the master branch, all right? And then I come here and I say, you know what? I want to reduce all the files here. So file 2.txt. So let's say file 2.txt, file 3.txt. I don't need all these files, right? I just need file 1 and file 4, for example. Now, if I do git status, right, you can see that here it's telling me that what? Deleted file 2, 3, and 5. And if you look at what it says on branch feature, which means whatever it is that I'm doing here, it is on what? On the feature branch, not the master branch. All right. So here I can do a little thing for that, and then I can come and say, nano. So I just want to put something in my file 1. Okay. And so here I can say, all right, still working on branches. All right. So you save and then you exit out. So now if I do git status, right, I can see that here it says this has been modified and these ones have been deleted. And then, all right, we're still on what? The feature branch. Okay. So let's clear that. So now I will say git add. Okay. I will say git commit. Okay, so let's commit that. So git commit -m. So what's the message? All right, I can say working on the new, all right, feature branch. And then I press enter, right? So you can also see here that, all right, we have an ID that had been generated for us already. And so now I can commit, I can push, right? But look at this. If I just say git push, now what does it say? It says the current branch has no upstream branch, which means the branch you're trying to push to, it is available locally, yes, but the remote origin, which is our GitHub, is not aware of this branch. So for the first time that you're pushing to that branch, you have to set the upstream to that origin branch. So what I can do here is basically just to copy this line, all right, and then I press enter, and now the branch, all right, has been created on the remote repo, right? And locally, the branch is also available. So now if I do git branch, all right, git branch, I can see that I'm still on my feature branch. Now, if I do git log, now let's see what we have. Now we have two things here. So here it says working, all right, on the new feature branch. That's the message. This is the author who committed the change, and this is the commit ID. So that unique ID, associated with that specific transaction, all right? And then you can see the head and then the feature. Now, this head here basically means that this is the active branch. Okay, this head, this capital head that you see here, basically means that this is what? The active branch. And the active branch is what? Is the feature branch. And this origin here is also what? The feature branch. Now, what you have here is basically the state of your repository. So locally, this is where you are at. All right. On the remote side of things as well, on your GitHub repo, all right, this is also where you're at, which means your local repository and your remote origin, they are basically, all right, stable. So they contain the same file. There's no disparity between the local repository and the remote repository as far as the feature branch is concerned. Now here, you can see that the origin master, all right, and the master branch, they are still at this level, which means that this feature branch right here, it is one commit ahead of the origin master branch, right? It is one, so which means this is more updated, all right? It has more, updated version of, files and all of that compared to this. Okay, so there are changes that we have here that are not available here. So now to my repo, all right, I can see it says feature had recent pushes 1 minute ago. And now I can see that here it shows me that I have two branches. If I click here, I can find the feature branch right here. So created. So if I click on that, all right, so here it is telling me that this branch is one commit ahead of what? Of master. So what can we do? We can merge, or we can create what you call a pull request in Git. Now, in the next video, we're going to see, all right, how you can merge your changes. So whatever it is that you've done in the feature branch, you want to merge it into the main branch. So we're going to see how we can do that, all right, using the command line as well. So I will see you, all right, in the next video. Thank you.